One scorching afternoon, as the sun burned the thatched roofs of Oazu, a stranger appeared on the dusty path leading into the village. She carried nothing but a woven basket on her arm and a small raffia bag that held her clothes. No companion, no greeting, just her shadow gliding quietly across the red earth. Her name was Olaga. And in all the years since Oazu was founded, no one had ever seen a woman like her. She was beautiful, woven from mystery itself. The people were stunned. The men stared. The women whispered. She said little when she arrived, only that she needed a place to sleep. She chose the abandoned hut near the edge of the forest, a hut that had once belonged to an old hunter who vanished one Harmattan season. No one went near it before, but Olaga moved in without fear, sweeping the floor with palm fronds and humming songs no one recognized. Then she began selling bananas at the village square. What followed could only be described as chaos. Men who once loitered lazily in front of the palm wine joint suddenly remembered they needed bananas. Boys fetched firewood just to pass by her store. Even the village chief's two sons, strong proud men with wives and children, started visiting her in the name of market errands. Her store overflowed with admirers even every morning. The other women selling tomatoes, onions, or okra complained bitterly. But how could they compete? Her bananas were no different from anyone else, but Olaga made them look like golden offerings from a goddess. What none of them knew was that Olaga was not who she seemed. She was never seen near mirrors, never glanced at the polished brows, never looked into the stream where others admired their reflection. In fact, anytime a mirror was brought near her, whether by accident or mischief, she turned away so quickly it was as if she feared being cursed. And she did fear, because in the mirror her true form waited. A form not made of beauty and bronze, but of shadows, with eyes that glow like burning coal, and a face twisted by ancient sorrow. Only Olaga knew what would happen if the people of Oazu ever saw it. But still, the men came. They brought her gifts: goat meat, palm oil, yams. They hover near her hot like bees around honey. At first, she resisted, telling them gently but firmly to go home to their wives. But they wouldn't listen. They said she was too beautiful to be alone, that she was sent by the gods themselves, that even their dreams now belongs to her. Slowly, one by one, the affairs began. Husbands began sleeping out at night, knocking softly at her door. Fathers began lying to their children, saying they were going on hunting trips. Even respected elders began to lose their honor under the spell of her allure. The women of Oazu grew bitter. Some threatened to confront her, some spat when they heard her name, but no one dare approach her directly, for in her eyes was something not quite human. There was something in the air of Oazu, something no one could name. The palm wine still flowed at the joint, but the men of the village, they have changed. They walked with clouded eyes, laughed without joy, and shouted at the slightest provocation of their wives. Their wives, who once wore bright wrappers and humming songs, now walked with lower heads and bitter silence. Children watched in confusion as once loving fathers became short-tempered and estranged. And at the heart of it all stood Olaga, calm and untouched by the storms she stared. She did not flinch when women hissed behind her back. She did not respond to accusations or rumors. She simply tied her wrapper, adjusted her basket of banana, and smiled with that haunting calm that made even her silence feel like a spell. But the women saw the truth in their bruises. Men who once trembled at the thought of raising a hand against their wives now roared like beasts. They came home smelling of banana peels and sweat, of perfume that wasn't their wives'. Among all the women nursing broken hearts, one stood out: Adaeze. Adaeze was not just another village girl. She was the kind that danced like a song, whose laughter brought peace even to the grieving mothers. Everyone in Obazu knew her love story with Emenike, how they had grown up together, fetching water from the stream, sharing mangoes in the bush. When Emenike finally married her, the whole village danced. They were the envy of many. So when he too began frequenting Olaga's hut, the village held their breath. Even the elders whispered, "If Olaga can take Emenike, no man is safe in this village." Adaeze said nothing at first. She cried into her wrapper at night, her heart crumbling like old yam flour. She had known Emenike all her life, every scar on his hand, every rhythm of his heartbeat. This new man, the one who come home late with that strange grin, was not Emenike she married. Something was wrong, and she could not wait for the gods to fix it. So Adaeze began to watch. She stopped cooking in the morning. Instead, she wrapped her head with a plain scarf, smeared charcoal beneath her eyes like a hunter, and hid behind trees and shrubs. She followed Olaga's movements, from her banana store to the stream path, from the village square to the abandoned hut. Adaeze kept her distance but never lost sight of her. She watched the man come and go, watched Emenike bring firewood one day and a basket of snail the next, watch Olaga accept every gift with a smile, but never with thanks. The men left her hut walking sideways like drunk men, their eyes glazed and hearts thumping like drums out of tune. But the most frightening thing of all, Olaga was never afraid. She lived as though she was beyond consequences. And that was when Adaeze knew this was no ordinary woman. But in all this, Adaeze couldn't lay her hands on anything tangible against Olaga. It was a quiet afternoon in Obazu. Olaga, wrapped in her usual blue wrapper, walked through the village square with her basket of bananas on her head. As always, heads turned. Men paused mid-conversation. Boys dropped their slingshot. Even the breeze seemed to lush in her presence. But fate that day had something different in store. A little boy, no more than 5, was playing near the fruit store, giggling as he held a shiny metal mirror his mother had brought from a traveling trader. He waved it at the sun, catching the light and scattering it playfully around the market. Then, just as Olaga passed, his hand tilted the mirror and he caught her face. For the first time, the village saw Olaga scream. A piercing, inhuman cry burst from her lips. She dropped her basket. Bananas tumbled to the earth like scattered gold and clutched her face, stumbling back. The little boy froze. He looked into the mirror again, and what he saw was not the face of the beautiful woman everyone adored. What he saw was something twisted, ancient, and monstrous. His tiny hand shook. The mirror dropped. He screamed and began to run. His mother caught him in panic, but he trashed like a child possessed, pointing at Olaga and crying, "She is not real! She is not real!" The market fell into a stone silence. The women began to murmur. What did this boy see? What did Olaga? Why did Olaga scream? Why does she never look into mirrors? Suspicion, once buried beneath envy, rose like smoke. But that was not the worst of it all. Days later, Obazu fell into a madness. The men, once lulled by lust, began to fight one another in the open. Fists flew at the village square. Spears were drawn in front of shrines. Grown men, fathers, elders, married husbands were no longer themselves. They argued over who Olaga truly belonged to, who had her heart, who she whispered to in the dead of the night. Some tore their clothes, some wept like children, others screamed her name like lost souls. Olaga watched them, calm as always, her eyes as cold and empty as the moonless night. The women of Obazu wept. Their homes were broken, their sons corrupted, their marriages shattered. That was when Adeze, the one whose heart bled most, stood up and said to the women, "We cannot sit and die. We must fight this spirit with truth." So they gathered. The women of Obazu, dressed in mourning wrappers, carrying calabashes of kola nut, palm wine and bitter leaf, journeyed past the hills and rivers until they reached the cave of Dibia Ojiofo, the seer from the 7 kingdoms. He sat cross-legged behind a fire, his hair white like cotton, his eyes clouded with ancient wisdom. When they told him why they had come, Ojiofo did not answer. Instead, he laughed, a deep, echoing laugh that made the birds flew the trees. The women exchanged fearful glances. Adeze clenched her fist. "What is funny, great one?" she asked. Ojiofo looked at her and said, "You came seeking the cure, but you do not yet understand the cause." And then, in a voice that shook leaves from the trees, he told them the truth. Olaga was once one of you, not just a woman, but the purest among you, he said to them. She was born with a rare mark on her face, one the gods placed to test humanity's heart. But you failed her. Men turned away in disgust when she passed. Women mocked her beauty. No one married her. And then, one night, someone entered her hut and forced himself on her. She knew him. She named him. But he spat in her face and laughed. And the village believed him, not her. She carried his child in shame. And so, one night, Olaga walked into the forbidden forest where no mortal dares to go. There, she offered her life and the life of her unborn child to the dark spirit in exchange for revenge and beauty. She asked to be adored, worshipped and remembered, and the spirit granted her wish, but at a price. The Olaga you see now is a shell. Her soul is gone. The woman is no more. What walks your village is the spirit of destruction, wearing the skin of a broken girl. The women wept, even the old ones, even the bitter ones. Pity crept into their hearts. But Ojiofo raises his hand and said to them, "Do not weep for her. She chose the darkness. She made her vow. Now, she is a well that drinks the hearts of men and spits out dust. If you wish to stop her, you must be ready to face not her beauty, but her truth." The fire in Dibia, Ojiofo's cave, had dimmed to glowing embers when he finally spoke again. "She has done this before," he said softly, almost to himself. Olaga walks from village to village, leaving behind ashes where love once lived. Her vengeance is not blind. It is deliberate. She feeds on the guilt of unfaithful men. Her victims are always the same. Husbands who cheat, fathers who lie, men whose words are sweeter than their spirits. The women looked down at the dirt floor, their eyes stinging with shame and silent fury. Their husband had invited this curse to their home. Their greed, their wandering hands and hungry eyes had awakened destruction. "How can we stop her?" Adaeze whispered finally. Ejiofor stared into the smoke for a long time before answering. Then, with a deep breath, he reached behind his shrine and brought out a long, narrow object wrapped in a white cloth. A mirror, not an ordinary one. He unwrapped it slowly, and the firelight flickered against the glass. He whispered into the mirror, his voice low and trembling with power, and the glass shimmered faintly as if it had come alive. "This mirror holds the power to strip away illusions," he said, handing it to Adaeze. "If Olaga looks into it, even for a moment, her true form will appear. But be warned, you must act immediately once she is unmasked. Follow everything I have told you. No hesitation. If you fail, you may not live to try again." They bowed deeply, thanking him with offerings, kola nuts, and a spotless white fowl, which they placed at his feet. Then they turned, carrying the enchanted mirror like a sacred body, and began their journey back to Oazu. Meanwhile, in Oazu, the sun had not yet risen when the screams began. Villagers ran to the square, clutching wrappers and lanterns. Children cried. Women covered their mouths in horror. There, on the red earth of the village square, lay the lifeless bodies of 3 men. Their eyes were open, their faces twisted in expression of terror. Their fingers were bent inward, as though grasping at invisible ropes pulling them to the underworld. The priest was called. The chief was summoned. Prayers were chanted. Libation poured. But no one could explain what happened, except the women. They knew Olaga had claimed them. They were all known to be unfaithful men. Each one has visited her hut. Each one had abandoned his wife's bed for her intoxicating beauty. The morning spread like wildfire, and yet Olaga was untouched. She walked through the square later that morning, as calm as a river in dry season. Her head held high, her basket of bananas balanced with effortless grace on her head. Not even the bodies of her victims stirred her step. Her beauty shone brighter than ever, as if fed by the very chaos around her. The women watched her pass. They clenched their fists. Adaeze and the other women's absence burned like a wound. They had not returned yet from the journey, and time was running out. The air in Oazu was thick with dread. The drums were silent, the birds no longer sang, and the spirit of destruction still walked among them, wearing the face of a goddess. By the morning of the 7th day, Oazu was no longer a village. It was a shadow of itself. 7 men had died, 7 fathers, 7 husbands, 7 souls who had wandered too close to the flame. No one dared to sleep. The market was empty. Drums had fallen silent. Children clung to their mothers, and even the birds refused to sing. Then, just as the sun crested the hills and bathed the land in golden soap, Adaeze and the women returned. They came like warriors, face tired, eyes sharp, their footsteps steady, wrapped in white and ash. They moved through the village quietly, not drawing attention. They carried the enchanted mirror, wrapped in white cloth, as the Dibia had instructed them. That morning, they did not weep, but they acted. At the center of the marketplace, where Olaga often passed, the women placed the mirror upright on a carved wooden stand. They covered it once more with a white cloth and poured drops of palm oil around it, forming a sacred circle. The air was heavy. The trap was set. Minutes later, and then she came. Olaga. Her wrapper was red that day, the color of fire and blood. Her basket balanced as always. Her walk as graceful as a drifting leaf. She had not aged a second. If anything, she was more radiant, more terrifying in her beauty. The villagers watched from behind stores and doorways. Some held their breath, others held their hearts. Olaga approached the marketplace. Then, just as she passed the mirror, someone called her name. Olaga! Then she turned, and in that very instant, the cloth was pulled away from the mirror. The mirror stood back and waited. Olaga's eyes met her reflection, and the earth seemed to stop spinning. She screamed, a sound not of woman or human, but something ancient, wrecked and filled with agony. The entire village saw it, the reflection in the mirror. They all saw it, no longer the beautiful woman they knew. What stood in the glass was a dark entity, twisted, born, its eyes like wells of black fire, its mouth stretched in an internal scream. And then the mirror pulled her in. Her body shimmered, twisted, and vanished, sucked into the glass like smoke into a jar. She was trapped. Adaeze moved quickly. She knelt before the mirror and broke the sacred egg Dibia Ejiofor had given them. A great wind rose. Then, in one voice, they lifted the mirror and shattered it upon the ground. A blinding light burst from the sherds, and then silence. The birds, no wind, no cry, just peace. For the first time in weeks, the air was calm, the sun warm, the earth without burning. The ground no longer felt heavy. The spirit was gone. Olaga was never seen again. And in her place, a lesson remained. The men of Obazu wept, not just from fear, but from shame. They went to their wives on bent knees, with bare feet and broken words. They begged for forgiveness. Some fasted, some built shrines in their home to honor loyalty. All of them had learned a terrible truth. When a man breaks his vow, he opens a door, and not all who walk through are women of flesh. And so, the story of Olaga, the woman who never looked in mirrors, the spirit who punished unfaithful men, was told from mouth to ear, generation to generation. Children gathered around fires to hear how beauty can hide destruction, and how the mirror, though silent, never lies. And whenever a stranger entered Obazu, the women watched her carefully, not in hatred, but in memory. The end. What did you learn from this powerful story? Do well to comment on the comment section.